The Annenberg Inclusion Initiative evaluated 1,300 top grossing movies from 2007 to 2019. In 2019, 113 directors were attached to 100 top movies. Out of the 113 directors, 12 were women. Our program talks with a TV and feature writer to discuss programs for this underrepresented population and how she has benefited by them. It's good to have you here.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you. And now your host, Dr. Angela Williamson.
Jude Roth.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, like you said, I am a TV and feature writer, and I have definitely benefited over the years by seeing progress that women are making as directors, behind the camera, on the page, basically in every role possible, but we have a lot further to go. I started writing when I was, a few years out of college, and I'd gone to NYU to School of the Arts, studied drama, I was an actor, and while I was there I started writing scripts, but I intended to stick with theater. After college, though, I was auditioning for film and TV, or at least wanting to, and my agent at the time sent me out for a lot of videos, music videos, which was fine. I have a background in dance and I was willing to give it a go, but I think the final straw that pushed me into writing for film and eventually for TV was this one audition where he said, please make sure you make your lips big and red, because they're really looking for big red lips. And I was like, okay, I don't want to disparage the face I have, but I'm no Angelina Jolie. I'm not gonna fool anyone, no matter how much red lipstick I put on. And I just felt really frustrated because it was, it basically encapsulated the types of roles that I was finding that I could go out for. And I decided I need to try to write my own. It came from a selfish place at first, but I realized that if I could somehow help improve the roles that were being offered to actresses to play, then, and they ended up making a difference in the world getting out there, then it could probably help improve how women were perceived and treated in the world.
So tell us about that first film you wrote to include women like you in as the starring role.
Okay. Well, I will say that the woman that was the anti-hero in the first script that I wrote, it was an adaptation of a Nobel Prize-winning author's novel called A Sport of Nature. I fell in love with the novel, I fell in love with the character. I'd never seen any female character like this before in film. It was epic, the way that Gandhi was epic, except it was told from the perspective of, you know, perhaps a not very likable woman who starts off as a young girl. We see her grow up over 40 years or so and develop a conscience. She was described in the book as someone who was not immoral, not moral, but amoral, just had no sense of who she was in the context of society. She was growing up in 1960s apartheid South Africa. And I didn't see myself as her. I wanted to be her. You know, she became instrumental in taking down apartheid South Africa. Not because she was the voice of dissent, but because she got caught up in the movement in Tanzania, in Eastern Africa, fell in love with a freedom fighter, had his baby, he was assassinated. She ended up marrying a Ghanaian, fictional Ghanaian president, and wound up at the fictional Nelson Mandela's inauguration of South Africa as the president of South Africa. All of this happened before Mandela was even released from Robben Island. And so the novel to me was prescient about what one person can do, flawed as he, she, they may be, once a consciousness is awakened to something greater than themselves. And that was one reason I wanted to be her, but also she was really cool. Also, she was, I'll just pause and say, also she was just a really cool person who I tend to worry too much. She tended to worry not at all, which maybe contributed to her lack of sense of morality. But in any case, that was the first female character that I wanted to bring to the screen. And I wound up being able to option the novel from Nadine Gordimer, the author, and worked with, I did not know what I was doing, so I worked with a script consultant who had a wonderful background in helping filmmakers for decades get their work produced, get their scripts up to snuff.
So you wanted to change the way that women were viewed and their characters were viewed in film.
Yeah.
So how does that actually tell us where Jude comes from?
I grew up in a small western Massachusetts town that was called, the sign when you entered the town and when you left, it was "Welcome to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, the plastics capital of the world." And when you left, it was "Bye-bye, you're leaving the plastics capital of the world." It was a town that had a major corporation in it, and it employed a lot of the residents there. That this big corporation fled overseas and left the town with pollution in its air, in its water, and its land. And it decimated the area, and it bankrupted so many people. Our main street, which was North Street, started closing down, and it was a very sad community. There was a lot of devastation there. The EPA eventually won a suit to have this corporation clean up the area, but it is still fighting to get the corporation to actually do that. So I came from this town that had been thriving. I witnessed a corporate decision to leave the town, and it left it in not a very good state of affairs. And at the same time, I was a child, and at the same time, my family was going through a lot of personal drama of its own. So while the town was falling apart, so was my family.
How does our story shape us as storytellers?
Okay.
And I'd love for you to talk about that.
What I know from walking in my shoes is very different from what you know walking in your shoes. We all have, I think, as artists everywhere and human beings everywhere, we have the ability, if we're lucky, to empathize and project ourselves imaginatively into other people's situations. But nobody can tell my story the way I can tell it.
Tell me, how have you continued talking about marginalized society?
Back in 2010, there was a Senate bill in Arizona, Senate Bill 1070, I think it was. It was dubbed the Show Me Your Papers bill. It was the most heated bill of that era against immigrants, right? So the sheriff at the time in, Maricopa County, I think it was really not holding any punches back and going after immigrants in a way that I thought erroneously was the height of our immigration debate in this country. It was very disheartening to me to see how undocumented immigrants were being treated, and citizens of America who were just racially profiled were being discriminated against. I learned about this bill from an NPR story. I heard about farmers talking about how they hired undocumented immigrants because they could afford them. And the immigration debate in this country was making it pretty much impossible for them to do that. So there were two injustices I was seeing. Are we not paying our farmers enough that they can't hire people at living wages, and the undocumented aspect? And so I started exploring that topic of undocumented immigration and the harassment and the troubles that that community was facing. So I wrote a 10-minute script called El Doctor because I knew that a lot of people coming from a lot of different countries, not just Mexico and other Latin and South American countries, had professions before they got here, went to school, learned different trades, and had to start over when they escaped intolerant or dangerous regimes. The script was called El Doctor. I wrote it in 2010. It was about an undocumented day laborer that was hired by a family in Arizona to do some work out in the yard, and through a tragedy of errors, wound up on the run. Hola, habla inglés?
You need help?
Come on, let's go.
Yes, you.
Mijo.
Some screaming inside my neighbor's house.
I wanted to explore what it was like from both the white, privileged family perspective, and there was a break in the family even between husband and wife, and where the wife was the more reactive of the two, and what it was like for this undocumented laborer who turned out to be a doctor. Not to give too much away, but now you know everything. So I wanted to explore what that was like in a brief period of time. That ended up winning some film festivals and playing at some really prestigious ones that I love, like the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival, and Latino Public Broadcasting ended up buying the film for a PBS online film festival.
Thank you so much, Jude, for not only sharing your personal story with us, but using your talent to ensure that diversity is definitely in entertainment. Thank you so much.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight, both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back, because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 adults in America live with some form of a disability, and more than 10% of these adults are living with a cognitive disability. Tonight, we talk with the founder of an organization helping individuals and families with cognitive disabilities. Dr. Donna Hunter, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, thank you, Angela. Thank you for having me. And truly, my heart and passion is just to enlighten and encourage folks that do have family members or know folks that are affected with a developmental disability. That's my heart's work, and it's my life's work.
There's a lot to Dr. Hunter. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Okay. I know, there's a lot up, because of course, when you have a passion and you have a heart for something, it opens doors. So not knowing that my daughter's disability would lead to, the making of a short film or the birthing of an organization that would help to educate families, it's taken a whole different avenue for us. That in turn also kind of opens the door to doing a book and just making sure that other families and folks know about what to do, how to do it, and where to get the resources they need if they have a family member with a developmental disability.
Tell us a little bit about the documentary you helped produce. Tell us the title. Tell us a little bit of how you've been promoting it.
Okay, so we filmed this documentary back in 2012. And Colored My Mind. It's an award-winning documentary, has aired here on PBS and some other stations during Autism Month, so that it's an awareness piece. It's definitely a piece where we came together, myself, Tisha Campbell-Martin, LaDonna Hughley, and 2 others. We came together for the purpose of enlightening and educating families on disabilities and making sure that families in diverse communities, especially in the African American Latino community, get access to resources and interventions that could absolutely change the trajectory of their child's life.
So tell us a little bit about, you are a retired administrator, so tell us how that role fits into Allie's Allies, your nonprofit organization, and promoting this documentary.
Okay, so I know I'm a young retired, and I'm okay with that. I'm a young retired because after a season, 20 years, I came late into education. Yes, I did. I came in to education at age 40, and I immediately got a counselor position. Prior to that, I was home because there was no place for my child. I would say that she was going to school, but not all of the interventions and resources were available to her, and I didn't know how to fight. So I went back to school just to find out information and how I could be an asset to my own daughter. Thus, that propelled me into counseling and leadership and administration. Thus, going all the way from being a counselor to a principal. And that then, after that season was over in the last year, I moved into advocacy within the disability realm, but for schools and for the community so that children could get access. It's all about the access, it's equity, it's inclusion for those diverse communities, which they don't always get.
So what have you learned as a school administrator that can help parents out there right now that has a person that they're caring for with a cognitive disability?
Oh, I love that. I love that question. Because as an administrator, it's so wonderful. I feel so blessed in that I'm on both sides of the seat. I've been on the side of the IEP where you're crying and they're telling you the things that your child can do, they may not do. And I've also been on the side where I'm sitting there and I'm hugging on a parent and telling them we're going to do our best, we're going to give them what they need as much as we can, and let's work together. So I really feel that wonderful, interesting juxtaposition that here I am a parent, here I am a principal, and I can have that visual, and I can also have that tactile, and I can have that presence of mind to be empathetic, and also the knowledge to help them to move their child to the next level. And as well, the hard conversations, because sometimes it's a difficult conversation.
Let's talk about Dr. Donna Hunter. Who are you and where you're from, including your book? Tell us about that.
Okay, so if you ask who is Donna Marie Hunter, Dr. Hunter, I'm not only just a mom of a special needs child, but in our community as an advocate, but the very heart of coming from here, this community, Los Angeles. I'm native Los Angeles, and I love the portion of my life that I can celebrate the fact that I come from dire straits. I come from welfare. I come from not having enough food to eat. I come from those places so that I can relate. And I take that with me when I go into spaces where people don't always think just because she's Dr. Donna Marie Hunter and she's now a #1 best-selling book, has a book. It's a whole different trajectory. But I also bring them back and say, here's where I started, and here's what I want to make sure that your child gets. So I would say if you ask who's Dr. Donna Marie Hunter, she's that girl. She's sitting on the porch at her house, and I would say it's a little apartment, and it's not the best one. And she's also now in a home where she's actually advocating and doing other work. But I'm both. I'm heart, and I'm also that woman from way back when. She's the little girl from way back when who didn't have very much as a young child.
Do you think your story is very important, especially as an advocate, to reach various different people and demographics?
Oh, I think so. One of the things about the film, Colored My Mind is the name of our documentary. Yes. One of the things about the film, and that really brings home to folks, is that we have women from each walk of life. You've got the Tisha Campbell, who is the actress. You've got LaDonna Hughley, who is D.L. Hughley's wife. And you've got Tammy, who's Shaka Khan's sister. And then you've got Shannon, who is an attorney in the industry. And then you've got Donna Hunter. And she has a totally different idea or thought.
I think I hold two realities. I hold the reality that my daughter is autistic. She doesn't talk. She's not potty trained fully at times. The other reality is I have a faith, an unequivocal faith in God. So I can believe and I can rest knowing that the end, although it's not the end that I expected, I'll rest in what He has in mind.
When we got that diagnosis, it was like getting told that your child has cancer or something that's I didn't know what that meant. I just knew it wasn't going to be a normal life for him or us.
When he got his diagnosis in 2nd grade by Dr. B.J. Friedman at UCLA, she told us, don't tell him what's going on. You don't want it to be a crutch.
The things that go through your mind, it's like, is he gonna be one of the bums on the street, talking to himself? What's gonna happen if I die?
who's going to take care of him? Because that mentality when you first get the diagnosis is, it's like a death sentence. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like, even though it's not.
So in the documentary, you can see there's everybody from all walks of life, and their children are at different levels, but yet you can find a way to connect with them. So when we go out into the community, so I tell you this, I go out to schools, community centers, as well as churches, because that's one place we have really found that there's an open door for people in the African American and Latino community. They literally will come to a church for a symposium. Now, we make sure it's free. That's one of the reasons why we raise funds for Allies, so that we can go in, give them the services and give them the information for free. But that's the one connector. And when they see the film, that's part of our enlightenment. So we educate them. We talk about the CDC. We talk about the Learn the Signs, Act Early. We talk about the entire mapping of from very beginning, to up into like 3 to 4 years old. We talk about that entire journey, the early access journey. We talk about that journey. Then we screen the film. So we're doing a symposium for these folks, and we screen the film, and immediately when they see these 5 women, different walks of life, children at different levels of autism or disability, they can start to connect, and they can kind of take their, I would say, that guard down. Because in our community, there's a stigma a lot of times with regards to disabilities, especially cognitive disabilities and any type of mental health. So if that's true, we've got to find a way, and the film does just that. It brings us all to a level where we all can say, oh, that's somebody just like me. Oh, boy, she has a child on the spectrum. Oh, I can kind of get you, we can make you, I'll say, connect with the film. Thus, we then have an avenue to come in with the empower piece. So we educate, we enlighten, and then we empower. We empower folks with information. Because what you don't know, you don't know. And once we give you the information, you can then start to assimilate it. Sometimes it takes longer than others for you to really get a hold of the fact that maybe my child has a need and they have a disability. But once you do, we then get you connected with resources. If it's in the school district, wonderful, because they always have the APE, the adaptive education, the adaptive physical education, the OT, if they have gross motor or fine motor disabilities. And they also have the speech, because one of the telltale signs of a developmental delay is speech. So if you see those things and you know that this is your child, and you can see families and folks that look like you telling you that there's hope and there's a brighter future for your child, it kind of disarms them. But it's got to be where they want to come most, and that's in the schools, that's in the community, and that's in the churches.
So you talked about the empowerment part of it, which is so important. But then you also took some time to explain a lot of those difficult terms that parents hear and don't understand. Do you find that that's probably the biggest gap, because they don't understand what they don't know?
Yes, I would definitely say so. That's one of the pieces that has to come into play. Because if you're sitting across the table, if you're in an IEP, which is an individual education plan, it's the plan that we put together so that your child knows what they have, their baselines, as well as what services we're going to invoke so that your child can continue to progress. So that's part of the learning that we do, is to give you some vocabulary and some understanding of what all of these acronyms mean and how they can be beneficial to your child in that setting.
So tell us for a few minutes, and I like to ask people, let's talk about why you're with us today. Okay. And you have one organization that you've started, and you talked a little bit about that, but you also have another organization that you started in response to the book that you just wrote. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I would say they all kind of piggyback on one another. That's why I said the little girl, and then you have the grown woman. So in the book, Women Who Rise, the chapter that I really connect, of course, the chapter that I wrote is Repair of the Breach. So I talk a little bit about what it meant to be a child with nothing, or with parents who are splitting, divorcing, abandoning, all of that stuff. I talk a little bit about that. And then I talk about having a child with a disability, and I thought all of my hopes and dreams would be met in this child, and here she has a developmental disability. She can't do any of the things that I never got as a daughter. So you have that dynamic going on. Then it comes around to, how do we repair it? How do we get to a point where we acknowledge that there's a disability, there's some things that I did not get in life, there's some things that my child may not do, but how do we repair the heart so that we can go on to do great things? And in our case, one of my repairs is Allie's Allies. Taking a devastating diagnosis and going out and helping someone else's child, or helping someone else that may have the same diagnosis or is grappling with that type of diagnosis. That's what I would say, that's one of my heart things when it came to really putting the book out there.
Dr. Donna Hunter, thank you so much for everything that you do, not only for advocating for people with cognitive disabilities, but for also advocating for the people who care for them. Thank you so much.
I'm so gracious and thankful for you to have me here today, Angela.
And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Stay in touch with us on social media. Good night and stay well.